The sky above the Yucatan Peninsula was a brilliant, deceptive blue until the very moment the atmosphere itself began to scream. A mountain of rock, 10 kilometers wide, hurtled toward the ocean at 40 times the speed of sound. When it struck, the impact was not just a collision, but a continental-scale explosion that displaced the crust of the Earth. A wall of white light blinded every living creature for thousands of miles, followed by a thermal pulse so intense that the air itself ignited. Forests across entire continents spontaneously combusted, and for the first few minutes, the planet felt less like a cradle of life and more like a celestial furnace. Long before the dust had even begun to settle, the global hierarchy of life was being dismantled. The era of the Titans was ending in a symphony of fire and falling debris. In the immediate aftermath of the strike, billions of tons of vaporized rock were shot into the upper atmosphere, only to fall back as glass spherules. These tiny, glowing beads acted like trillions of space heaters, raising the surface temperature to hundreds of degrees. On the ground, the great dinosaurs had nowhere to hide. Their massive bodies, once their greatest advantage, became their death warrants, as they could not escape the heat or find shelter in the scorched earth. As the first hour passed, the initial firestorms gave way to even more chaotic destruction. Mega tsunamis, hundreds of meters high, raced across the Atlantic and Pacific, scouring coastlines and dragging terrestrial life into the boiling depths. Earthquakes of unimaginable magnitude shook the foundations of every mountain range, triggering volcanic eruptions that added toxic gases to an already suffocating sky. It was a chaotic theater of extinction, where the rules of biology were rewritten in blood and ash. The landscape was no longer a lush jungle, but a blackened graveyard, shrouded in a thick, soot-filled haze that began to blot out the sun. However, amidst the wreckage and the roaring flames, a different kind of story was unfolding, in the shadows. Beneath the roots of burning trees and inside the deep crevices of riverbanks, small furry creatures stirred. These early mammals, often overlooked in the Age of Giants, possessed a secret weapon, the ability to burrow. While the Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops were exposed to the searing heat of the atmosphere, these small scavengers were insulated by the very earth that was being destroyed. Their small size meant they required less food, and their varied diets allowed them to survive on the detritus of a dying world. By the 12th hour, the impact winter had begun to take hold. The soot and dust in the stratosphere formed a global shroud, reflecting sunlight back into space and plunging the Earth into a profound, freezing darkness. Photosynthesis stopped. The plants that had survived the fires now withered in the cold. This collapse of the food chain moved from the ground up. The large herbivores died of hunger, followed by the massive predators that fed on them. The giants were too specialized, too hungry, and too exposed. They were designed for a world of abundance, not a world of ash. As the 24th hour approached, the silence that fell over the planet was heavier than the darkness. The roar of the impact and the crackle of the global wildfires had faded into a cold, biting wind. The survival of life now rested on the shoulders of the resilient and the adaptable. Crocodilians retreated into the thermal stability of deep water, while birds, the last descendants of the feathered dinosaurs, clung to the few remaining pockets of habitable land. The extinction was not a single event, but a filter, one that favored the small, the burrowing, and those capable of enduring the long, dark years ahead. The mystery of why some survived while others perished lies in the brutal simplicity of environmental pressure. The giants required a functioning ecosystem to sustain their massive caloric needs, but that ecosystem had been vaporized in a single day. The small survivors, the ancestors of modern life, were the opportunists of the apocalypse. They lived on seeds, insects, and decaying matter, waiting for the sky to clear. When the sun finally broke through the clouds millions of years later, the world they emerged into was empty, a blank canvas, ready for a new chapter of evolution. The legacy of that fateful day is written in the bones of the fallen and in the DNA of every living thing today. It serves as a reminder that dominance is temporary, and that in the face of cosmic catastrophe, it is not the strongest who survive, but the most adaptable. The Earth burned, but in the ashes, the seeds of the future were already beginning to sprout, hidden in the burrows in the depths, waiting for their turn to inherit the planet. The extinction of the dinosaurs was not just an ending, but the violent, necessary birth of the world as we know it.